In this video, I'm going to teach you how to use a visual reference to create a design solution for an interior elevation and floor plan, how to use graphic techniques to document a design solution for an interior elevation and floor plan, and how to explore and present a variety of design solutions for an interior elevation and floor plan based on a visual reference and using the elements and principles of design. And so what you're looking at here is a different kind of visual reference. This one is what is referred to as a flat lay. And you might create these if you have a meeting in person with your client. You may lay a series of samples out on your conference table to get a response from your client or even your design team as just a starting point for a conversation about how a space might look and feel. And so in this case, this visual reference is something that we're going to use here just to start to think about a color palette. Now, looking at this visual reference doesn't mean necessarily that we're going to use these exact samples, but this gives us a sense of the colors that are going to be used, some of the textures that are going to be used, and perhaps the proportions that some of these things will start to appear in a finished design. Now, as we start to think about our design solution, we're going to be looking at an interior elevation and a floor plan. And we've got to document this design solution for these two drawing types, but we want to create some documents here that are going to be done very quickly because we want to understand what things are going to go where, and then also all the different possibilities and arrangements that these colors and textures and materials might take, depending on how members of our design team feel about the space or how our client might feel about the space. And so what you're looking at right now is a floor plan, and this is a floor plan of a rather nice, large, spacious master bathroom. And you can see here that this is a quick documentation of a design solution for a floor plan based on the visual reference that we just looked at. And so you can see that we have taken the elements and principles of design that we saw in that visual reference, such as, natural textures, some contrast between light and dark, manipulation of scale because we've got some small mosaic tiles and some large wood planks. And we've started to apply those to this floor plan. Now, this floor plan is what we call, once again, a very, very loose, sketchy floor plan here. And it's loose because I'm not sitting there for hours and hours physically rendering every single wood plank, representing where the light's going to come in, making sure that every element is photorealistically represented, because I'm not even sure right now that I'm going to show this arrangement to my client. I'm not entirely sure right now necessarily that I'm going to put those tiles on my shower floor and wood, dark wood on my main floor. I don't know that for sure now enough that I could start to then create a digital rendering that takes me a long time to present. Right now, all I want to do is show my design manager, show my design team, and maybe my client, if it was a very informal presentation, what I was thinking right now, knowing, of course, that I don't want to spend a lot of time creating these. I want to make sure that the design presentation here is loose and sketchy, because I want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable making changes to this and not holding back because they think I've spent too much time on this and I'm very tied to my design. So let's talk a little bit about the graphic techniques that I've used to document this design solution for the floor plan. So you can see here, I have used a series of graphic techniques to represent the materials and textures themselves. So the first thing I did was I selected markers from my rendering marker set, and I indicated the location of the wood planks. You can see right here, they're in brown. I've indicated with the very, very light gray, the color of the tub here, as well as the commode. I've also used the markers here to represent using a combination of like a scumbling technique as well as some stippling to indicate the onyx countertop. I've applied solid color to indicate the gold hardware. And then we can see if we come over to this shower stall, I have created a series of cross hatching here to indicate the textures. So I've got cross hatching, stippling, and parallel lines as my graphic techniques to indicate texture. I also have, of course, tried really to select markers that have a color that represents the materials that I'm thinking about. I'm also starting to think a little bit about scale. So you can see here that the scale of these tiles, based on the size of the door, might be around 4 by 4. If we think this door is maybe 30 or so inches wide, you can see here, even though my lines are not perfectly straight, and if I were to do this again, I might try a little bit harder to get them perfectly straight, but I didn't want to use a ruler. I have straight parallel lines indicating the wood planks here. And if this door is about 36 inches wide, I have planks, I've got about 7 planks here, 7 or 8 planks running across here, which would indicate that the planks themselves are right around 6 to 7 inches wide, which would be a really nice wide plank to put in a high-end luxurious space like this. And so from a color and texture and scale perspective, I'm bringing in those graphic techniques that we've learned throughout our time here. And I've also brought in just a very slight indication of shade and shadow. You can see I've got a little bit of stippling along this side here, a little bit of stippling coming on here, and a little bit in this corner here. Not tons, but just enough to indicate that there's just a little bit of a change in depth, and that I want to give just a sense that there's corners and things kind of popping up from the surface. And so from a rendering technique, that's one set of graphic techniques that I want to draw your attention to here. The other one is the graphic techniques that are used to annotate and document this design solution for clarity. And then you can see here, of course, I've got in my lower left-hand corner, where it always is, where we always look, the title and the scale and the north arrow for a plan. So we've got the title, of course, this is not to scale since it's been printed and drawn on and scanned and stretched and changed in size, and then of course presented on your screen. And so there's no way it's to scale right now, but I do have a north arrow, and that's really important because eventually I'm going to start to apply textures, and I want to be able to say on the north wall we want this, on the south wall we want this, and so we need that point here as well. Along the side here, I'm also, once again, using good annotation strategies. So you can see here, I've got leader lines that are connecting from the object I'm referring to, not floating next to or nearby, bringing them all the way across to the right margin of my drawing. You can see here that they're not overlapping each other. I'm carefully thinking about what I should label in which order so that I'm not crisscrossing lines. You can see I've got some elbows in this leader line here so that it bends. You can see here that my text is starting and stopping at about the same point. And again, the leader lines are stopping at the same point here. So there's an alignment of the lines and the margins as well. All my text is all capital letters, architectural hand lettering written horizontally, approximately the same size. I am missing that little note right here that says for design intent only. So I should definitely add that in. And then really much beyond that, this is just a very, very simple, sketched documentation of a potential design solution for this client that I could start to present to my design team before I go into the full process of rendering it. So what you're seeing here is an elevation, and so that's that elevation of that north wall. And once again here, you're seeing the same types of graphic techniques shown. You can see that I have the stippling, of course, across here. I've got my marker being used here to indicate sort of this rough texture as well. You can see here that I've got some materials being applied to the wall just behind the shower door, and I've indicated that this is glass by using those parallel lines to indicate the texture. You can see here that I've brought in the shadows here. So once again, in those graphic techniques, I'm seeing parallel lines, I'm seeing stippling, I'm seeing, there's not any cross hatching here, but if it was necessary to indicate a texture, I most certainly would. You can also see here that once again, I've got those same annotation techniques coming across here that indicate the materials, again, with those lines brought in, leader lines brought in, and again, the architectural hand lettering here. So now that you've seen how I'm applying this, and if we go back just for a moment, we can take a look at that visual reference once more. You can see here that once again, if I look at this visual reference and I start to extract the elements and principles of design, we can see that texture is very important. Color is very important, right? We've got a sort of a monochromatic color scheme that's got a combination of warm grays and then of course these warm browns coming in. We've got, as far as shape goes, we've got mostly geometric shapes, right? It's not very organic, free-flowing design. We've got, rectangles and hexagons coming across here. And of course, we're going to have a balance between sort of this light and dark. And so if we were going to then take a design like this and maybe think about some different iterations for it, we wanted to create some new design solutions. Now we could look at a drawing like this and we could see the floor plan here and the elevation, and we could start to explore a variety of design solutions for this interior elevation and floor plan based on that visual reference and using those same elements and principles of design, but making it our own. And so in this, of course, the first thing we would do is begin with our drawing labels. So we would have floor plan not to scale and a north arrow down here in the lower left corner. On this elevation, of course, we would make sure that this says elevation of the north wall and of course not to scale. And then we could start to think about our graphic techniques, both selecting the markers, representing the textures using cross-hatching, scumbling, parallel lines, and stippling. We can apply a very simple understanding and representation of shade and shadow. And then once we have the materials applied in a very loose, sketchy way, then we can start to label along this margin here using those annotation strategies of those leader lines that are aligned and our architectural hand lettering on the side here. And what will result is a quick rendering, a quick documentation, visual documentation of a design solution that shows what we as a designer are thinking, but gives just enough of our design solution to show to members of the design team or maybe a client in an informal meeting to get their feedback, and so that we can change and adjust as needed, explore a few other different design solutions, and then once we've landed on something that we know works, then we can bring in some digital techniques and create a photorealistic rendering later on.